Have you ever looked up at the night sky and seen something you just couldn't quite explain? Or maybe, a friend shared a really wild story about a close encounter that genuinely made you stop and wonder.
Oh, definitely. For so many people, it's not just aliens in movies and games. It's this real, deep human curiosity about what else might be out there.
It really is that enduring fascination with life beyond Earth.
And that curiosity, that human element around aliens, is exactly what we're diving into today.
That's right. Welcome to The Deep Dive. This is where we take your stack of fascinating sources, articles, research papers, maybe some intriguing online threads you've sent our way, and we really unpack them. We dig in to find those crucial nuggets of knowledge and insight.
Yeah, our mission today is to explore this whole world of alien encounters. We'll go from, those big viral hoaxes that sweep the internet to the mysteries that just, well, they linger and keep baffling us.
And the core question we're tackling is, how do we even begin to tell the difference? How do we distinguish between genuine unknowns and, let's face it, elaborate fabrications when it comes to these alien stories?
Exactly. We're going to look at the incredible accounts people have shared, some of the surprisingly mundane explanations that pop up, and ultimately what this whole phenomenon tells us about human perception and belief.
So get comfortable. This deep dive is your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed about why these stories grab us. We'll guide you through specific cases, look closely at the evidence or lack thereof, and even explore the psychology behind why people believe. It's going to be quite a ride.
Let's jump right in. Our journey really starts with something we all live with: modern technology. It's incredible, right? But it's definitely a double-edged sword.
How so?
Well, it amplifies information instantly, which is great sometimes, but it also means misinformation, hoaxes, they can go viral at lightning speed. It creates this perfect breeding ground for some truly wild alien tales.
Right, and what's wild is seeing how quickly these stories spread before anyone's really checked them out. They tap into this collective imagination. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's actually quite serious. Okay, let's unpack one of these.
Let's kick things off with a classic case, one that definitely made headlines. The Russian frozen alien from 2011. Remember that one?
Vaguely, yeah.
Siberia.
That's the one. You have these two Russian guys out for a walk in the snow near Irkutsk. They claim they stumble upon this frozen alien corpse. And get this, it was just a month after villagers nearby reported seeing bright orange lights in the sky.
Ah, so the timing was perfect. Alien crash, right. That's the immediate narrative.
Exactly. And the YouTube video they posted, it just blew up, over 12 million views. People were fascinated, maybe a little freaked out.
But the truth was a bit less extraterrestrial.
Just a bit. When the police actually investigated, the men kind of sheepishly confessed they'd made the alien themselves out of breadcrumbs stuffed into chicken skin. A practical joke. Breadcrumbs and chicken skin. Wow, that's creative, I guess. But it shows how easily a compelling image, especially timed well, can just ignite global speculation, even if the reality is much more mundane. A prank that got the police involved.
It's pretty wild. What do you think drives that, going to such lengths for a prank that obviously gets way out of hand?
Maybe a mix of wanting attention, a bit of mischief, and maybe just not realizing how fast stuff spreads now. It's not just a local joke anymore. It's instantly global.
Good point. And speaking of things escalating, let's shift from pranks to things that actually stop traffic. Remember back in 2020, those viral videos from New Jersey?
Oh yeah, the threatening spacecraft over the turnpike.
Yeah.
Blue flashing lights moving slowly.
People were literally getting out of their cars on the highway, looking up, probably thinking, this is it.
And the mundane reality turned out to be.
A Goodyear blimp. Just getting some aerial TV shots for an NFL game happening nearby at MetLife Stadium.
A blimp. Not quite the alien invasion everyone was braced for. It really underscores how our expectations, maybe even our fears, can shape what we perceive, especially when we're kind of already looking for something extraordinary.
Absolutely. You can almost picture the drivers ready for War of the Worlds, and then, it's just advertising.
It shows how easily our brains connect the dots to the most dramatic conclusion possible. Okay, let's hop over to India. 2016, Uttar Pradesh. There was panic when photos started circulating of what looked like a huge spaceship hovering near buildings.
Right, and the story got even weirder because the photographer supposedly vanished, phone number untraceable, very mysterious packaging.
Until the experts took a look.
Exactly. They pretty quickly concluded it was likely made with a photo app, and crucially, it bore a striking resemblance to a UFO from the movie Independence Day.
Ah, the Hollywood influence. So this highlights another angle in the digital age. It's not just physical pranks. Really convincing visual effects can be made by almost anyone now. That line between fantasy and reality gets incredibly blurry, incredibly fast.
And even serious organizations aren't immune. Think about the military. High stakes, high tension.
Like that incident in South Korea in 2019, near the DMZ.
Precisely. The military scrambled jet fighters, helicopters were buzzing around, all because radar picked up an unidentified object coming from North Korea. World media jumped on it, especially since Donald Trump was in the region. The potential implications felt massive.
And the swift, anticlimactic conclusion.
The UFO causing all that high-stakes drama, a flock of about 20 birds.
Birds. Wow. That really raises questions about perception under pressure, doesn't it? Especially in tense environments. How quickly we jump to the extraordinary conclusion when something's unexplained, even with advanced tech. Context is everything.
It really is. Even sophisticated radar needs careful interpretation.
Okay, now let's talk about Mexico. Seems to be a real hot spot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Volcan Popocatépetl, their biggest volcano.
Oh yeah, they actually have a dedicated 247 UFO spotting camera aimed right at it. Apparently, sightings of spaceships around the volcano are pretty frequent. It's practically a landmark for UFO hunters.
So it's no surprise Mexico has its own celebrity UFO-ologist, Jaime Maussan. He made waves in 2017, right? Went to Peru.
He did. He went to analyze these mummies found near the famous Nazca lines, looking for evidence of alien life. One mummy reportedly had this elongated skull and hands with only 3 fingers. Very unusual, suggesting some incredible biological anomaly.
But there was a catch, wasn't there? Something about the documentary.
Yeah, the fact-checking site Snopes pointed out that the streaming platform showing Maussan's documentary charged a pretty hefty annual fee, and its library was full of videos about alien abductions, paranormal stuff. Kind of colors the credibility of the findings, suggesting a potential financial motive to keep the mystery, well, mysterious.
Right. Where there's intense public interest, sometimes there's also a financial incentive.
Right.
So looking back at all these hoaxes, what are the common threads?
Well, the motivations seem to range from attention-seeking, maybe financial gain, or sometimes just amusement, like the Russian case. They often play on what we expect UFOs to look like: discs, triangles, blinking lights.
And they often leverage famous locations, right? Like
Yeah.
Roswell or Area 51.
Yeah.
Places already steeped in UFO lore.
Exactly. It taps into pre-existing beliefs. But the downside is serious. These deceptions really erode trust in genuine scientific research into unexplained aerial phenomena, and they can have a real psychological impact on believers who feel let down or tricked. It just muddies the waters.
It really does. It makes it so much harder to sort out the few potentially real anomalies from all the noise.
But that's the flip side, isn't it? What happens when the explanations aren't simple? When the evidence just doesn't fit in easy debunking?
Exactly. While most sightings probably do have mundane explanations, there are those few cases. The ones that really linger and push the boundaries of what we understand. This is where it gets really interesting. Which one stands out to you as a truly puzzling, enduring mystery?
For me, one of the most compelling has to be the Canadian encounter with Stefan Michalak back in 1967.
Ah, yes, the Falcon Lake incident. Tell us about that.
Michalak was an amateur geologist out prospecting in Manitoba. He spots 2 glowing objects in the sky. One of them actually lands not too far from him. He said he got close enough to look inside and saw blinking lights.
And then things took a turn.
They did. As the craft started to lift off, it apparently tilted, and a blast of hot gas hit him, setting his shirt on fire. It knocked him back, and he said there was this opening that hissed and smelled strongly of sulfur. He managed to sketch the object, a classic 35-foot disc, before it flew away.
But the really intriguing part is the aftermath, right? Physical evidence.
That's what makes it stand out. Michalak became quite ill afterwards. He had these strange grid-like burn marks on his chest and stomach, consistent with radiation exposure. And years later, investigators actually recovered a twisted piece of metal from the landing site that was radioactive.
Wow. Radioactive metal. And the official investigation.
Neither the Canadian nor the U.S. military could ever explain it. It just remains this enduring mystery. It's so well documented, and the physical evidence is hard to ignore. Tour guides still talk about it, and the Royal Canadian Mint even issued a commemorative silver coin depicting the event. You can shine a black light on it, and it shows the yellowish blast that supposedly hit Michalak.
$130 coin. That shows how much the story has persisted. It really is one of those cases with physical traces that defies easy explanation.
Okay, now let's pivot to perhaps the most iconic abduction story, the one that really set the stage for so much UFO lore, the Betty and Barney Hill incident from 1961.
Right, the archetypal abduction. This story has influenced countless others. They were driving through New Hampshire late at night.
And they noticed this strange, bright star that seemed to be following them, moving erratically. Barney, using binoculars, believed he saw figures inside some kind of craft looking back at him.
And then came the period of missing time, the fragmented memories.
Exactly. After hearing these strange, buzzing sounds, they found themselves much further down the road with about 2 hours they couldn't account for. Later, Betty noticed her dress was torn and had this weird pinkish powder on it. Their car's trunk had these shiny concentric circles marked on it.
And the compass detail. A compass would apparently whirl uncontrollably when brought near those marks on the trunk. Barney also mentioned having this mental block, this inability to recall parts of the event, classic abduction narrative elements.
And because of this missing time and fragmented memory, they eventually sought help 2 years later from Dr. Benjamin Simon, a respected Boston psychiatrist and neurologist who used hypnosis.
Under hypnosis, the details started emerging, didn't they? Barney's account was quite vivid.
Extremely. He described being taken aboard the craft, lying on a metal table, having samples taken, hair, nails, skin scrapings. He recalled feeling his groin area go cold during some kind of procedure. Very detailed, very visceral recollections.
And Betty's recollections under hypnosis.
Betty recalled it more like a dream, but described two small men, maybe 5 feet to 5'4". She said they wore blue uniforms, had grayish skin, black hair, large dark eyes, prominent noses, and bluish lips. These descriptions became incredibly influential in shaping the image of the gray alien. But perhaps the most debated element to come out of Betty's hypnosis was the star map.
Ah yes, the star map. She claimed one of the beings showed her this map.
An oblong map, she called it. It had dots for stars and lines connecting them, which the being apparently described as trade routes, places visited occasionally, and expedition routes. And then came that cryptic question from the alien. Where are you on the map? Betty, of course, didn't know.
This map became huge. A few years later, in 1968, an amateur astronomer named Marjorie Fish took Betty's drawing.
And using the brand new 1969 Gliese star catalog of nearby stars, she painstakingly built 3D models, trying to find a perspective that matched Betty's drawing. She concluded it depicted the Zeta Reticuli system, about 39 light years away.
And that interpretation just exploded. It cemented Zeta Reticuli in UFO lore as the supposed homeworld of the Greys.
But, like many things in ufology, there are significant scientific counterpoints here. First, Zeta Reticuli itself is a binary system, two sun-like stars orbiting each other. They're relatively dim, but have been visible to the naked eye from the southern hemisphere for centuries. Nothing inherently secret about them.
And Fish's interpretation itself has been questioned, right?
Heavily. Later analysis suggested her model matching was based on selecting specific stars from outdated data. Some prominent astronomers, like Carl Sagan, were initially intrigued, but later became skeptical. And Fish herself reportedly later conceded that the correlation was probably unlikely.
What about planets? If aliens came from Zeta Reticuli, there should be planets there, right?
You'd think so. But despite searches, no planets have been definitively discovered orbiting either Zeta Reticuli 1 or Zeta Reticuli 2. There was a brief flutter of excitement in 1996 about a possible hot Jupiter, but that was later retracted. They did find a debris disk, like our asteroid belt or Kuiper belt, around one star in 2010, suggesting maybe dwarf planets could form, but still no confirmed Earth-like worlds.
And there's an age issue, too.
Yeah, earlier estimates suggested the stars were quite old, maybe 6 to 8 billion years, giving life plenty of time to evolve. But more recent spectroscopic analysis suggests they're much younger, perhaps only around 2 billion years old. That significantly shortens the window for complex, technologically advanced life to arise.
Which ties back into the Fermi paradox. If advanced civilizations are out there, especially ones capable of interstellar travel, why aren't they more obvious? Why aren't we seeing constant signals or probes, especially from relatively nearby systems like Zeta Reticuli?
Exactly. And looking specifically at the Hill case, skeptics raise valid points. Hypnosis is known to be unreliable. It can easily create false memories or confabulations, blending real experiences with subconscious thoughts or external suggestions.
There are also inconsistencies in the Hill stories over time, which isn't unusual with memory, but it adds to the skepticism.
Perhaps the most compelling skeptical argument, though, is the pop culture connection. Just weeks before Barney's first hypnotic session where he described the aliens, an episode of the sci-fi show The Outer Limits called The Bolero Shield aired.
And the alien in that episode.
Had large wraparound eyes, no discernible nose or ears, bearing a striking resemblance to the descriptions Barney later gave under hypnosis. The episode also featured surgical scenes that some say mirror Barney's recalled examination. It strongly suggests that cultural imagery might have subconsciously influenced their recollections during hypnosis.
It's a fascinating case because it has all these layers. The couple's sincerity, the physical evidence like the dress and car marks, the controversial hypnosis, the Starmac debate, and the potential cultural contamination. It really encapsulates the complexity of these encounters.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears now from these historical, almost foundational cases to more recent phenomena, especially things emerging in the digital age with viral videos and attempts at digital forensics.
And you can't talk about recent UFO lore without mentioning Bob Lazar.
Definitely not. Lazar burst onto the scene in the late 1980s with his claims about working at a secret facility near Area 51, specifically Sector 4 or S4.
And his big claim was that he worked on reverse engineering recovered alien spacecraft, right?
Yeah.
And he knew where they came from.
Yes, he stated he was told the craft originated from, wait for it, the Zeta Reticuli system. There it is again.
It always comes back to Zeta Reticuli. What did he say about how they worked?
His most specific claim was about their propulsion system. He said they were powered by a super heavy element, element 115, which he claimed couldn't be synthesized on Earth at the time. He described how this element, when bombarded, produced anti-gravity waves that were amplified and focused by 3 emitters on the craft, allowing it to distort space-time and travel vast distances.
Element 115. That became a huge buzzword. The debate around Lazar is still fierce today.
It really is. Supporters point to things like him passing polygraph tests, though the validity of those is debated. They analyze his body language in interviews, claiming it shows sincerity. And a big point for them was when scientists did eventually synthesize isotopes of element 115, now officially named moscovium, in labs years later.
But the synthesized element didn't quite match Lazar's description, did it?
Not really. The isotopes created were highly unstable, lasting fractions of a second, and didn't exhibit the stable gravity-bending properties Lazar described. Critics also point to inconsistencies in his background story, like unverifiable claims about his education and previous employment.
And there's the disinformation theory.
Right. Some suggest Lazar might have been unwittingly or even wittingly part of a disinformation campaign. The intelligence community sometimes leaks partial truths mixed with falsehoods to gauge reactions or identify internal leaks. Lazar's story, with its mix of verifiable details like Area 51's existence and extraordinary claims, fits that pattern for some skeptics.
He remains a really polarizing figure. Okay, from Lazar, let's move to another major digital age mystery, the Skinny Bob video.
Ah, Skinny Bob. This one surfaced around 2011 and caused a massive stir online. It was presented as leaked KGB footage from the Soviet era, supposedly dating between 1942 and 1969.
And it purported to show what exactly?
A classic gray alien, quickly nicknamed Skinny Bob by the internet forums dissecting the footage. The narrative accompanying the leak claimed this was a captured alien pilot, hailing from Zeta Reticuli, of course, who was part of some kind of diplomatic mission that went wrong.
The footage itself wasn't just one clip, was it? It was a compilation.
Right. The uploader released several segments. There's footage seemingly showing a UFO from a house window, then aerial footage of one. There's a grainy clip of what looks like a crashed disc with an alien body nearby, an alien autopsy scene. Then the main Skinny Bob footage, the alien standing, blinking, moving its head in a sterile-looking room. Another clip shows it interacting with some kind of control panel labeled How to Drive in Russian. And maybe the strangest one, a color clip dubbed Family Vacation, showing multiple aliens standing passively alongside humans.
It's quite a package. What about the uploader, Ivan?
The person who uploaded it, using the handle Ivan0135, claimed they were releasing fragments from 7 original tapes. They use these very specific official-sounding designations like Treaty 2304 or Document 072E. Some saw this as adding authenticity, others felt it was too specific, a deliberate attempt to seem official, a sign of deception. Ivan also expressed frustration at negative comments, insisting they were just a middleman sharing the material.
The authenticity debate must have been intense. What were the arguments for it being real?
Proponents pointed to a few things. Some older forum members claimed they recalled seeing snippets of the footage years before 2011, suggesting it wasn't newly created. Technical analyses highlighted potentially consistent lighting from a single source in some shots and chaotic noise patterns that resembled real film grain rather than digital filters. Some error level analysis, ELA tests, which tried to detect digital manipulation, didn't show obvious signs of post-processing on the core figure, although this technique is debatable.
And the cost factor. Some argued it would be too expensive to fake, convincingly.
Yes, some VFX experts estimated that faking the black and white segments to that level of detail, especially back in 2011, could cost upwards of $250,000, maybe more if it involved sophisticated animatronics. The argument was that the focus should be on the underlying footage, suggesting the aging effects, scratches, dust, might have been added later to genuine, perhaps practical effects
And
footage.
what about the arguments for it being a fake?
Plenty of those too. Digital artists pointed to what they called CGI tells. Things like Skinny Bob's blinks being too fast, too mechanical, or inconsistent. The overall movement sometimes described as too generic, floaty, or puppet-like. A specific detail often mentioned is a ring or seam around the alien's neck that doesn't seem to deform naturally as the head moves, suggesting a mask or puppet head.
And the counter-argument to the cost.
Critics argued that the overlaid filters, the scratches, dust, color degradation, were actually very cleverly used to mask potential CGI flaws, and that a talented amateur VFX artist, using software readily available even in 2011, could potentially achieve this look for far less than $250,000, especially if they were skilled and dedicated.
Was there any connection made to existing films or productions?
This is maybe the most compelling piece of evidence for the hoax side. Researchers found remarkable similarities between scenes in the Skinny Bob footage and recreations shown in a 1997 documentary called Area 51, The Alien Interview. That documentary featured scenes of an alien sitting in a chair, strange symbols, a physician figure, aliens meeting humans in front of a wall, elements strikingly similar to those in the Ivan uploads.
Wow. Similar scenes from a 1997 documentary.
Yes, and get this, the timecode format displayed in the corner of some of Ivan's footage is reportedly identical to the format used in that specific 1997 documentary. That's a very specific technical detail to match purely by coincidence.
That does sound pretty damning.
Yeah.
So where does that leave Skinny Bob now?
It remains hotly debated in online communities. People are still trying to geolocate the backgrounds seen in the videos, hoping to find a real place that matches, maybe compare historical photos of buildings. Everyone's waiting for either more definitive proof, new material, or maybe even a confession from the creator someday. For now, it's this perfect example of an enduring digital mystery, a sort of Rorschach test for what people want to believe about alien contact.
Fascinating. Okay, we've looked at hoaxes, enduring historical cases, modern digital mysteries. Let's shift focus now to the human element. Why do people believe? What's going on psychologically?
This is a crucial part of the puzzle, because historically there was this really unfortunate tendency to just dismiss anyone who reported a UFO experience, especially an abduction, as being, mentally disturbed or suffering from some kind of psychopathology.
Right, that was the default assumption for a long time. But the research doesn't really back that up, does it?
No, largely it doesn't. Multiple studies over the years have generally found that people who report these experiences are, as one paper put it, clinically normal but atypical. They don't typically show higher rates of major mental illness compared to the general population. This really challenges that old, harmful stereotype.
So if it's not typically psychopathology, what psychological factors do seem to play a role in reporting these kinds of experiences?
One concept that comes up frequently is fantasy proneness. This is a personality trait. People high in fantasy proneness tend to have incredibly vivid, extensive imaginative lives. They might spend a lot of time fantasizing, have very detailed daydreams, maybe even report imaginary friends into adulthood. Sometimes they might have difficulty firmly distinguishing between fantasy and reality.
A very rich inner world. How does that connect to UFO experiences?
Well, research shows that people who score high on fantasy proneness scales are significantly more likely to hold paranormal beliefs in general, things like ghosts, ESP, psychic phenomena, and they're also more likely to report having had paranormal experiences, including UFO encounters or abductions.
Is it just the imagination, or is belief key?
That's an important distinction. Studies suggest that paranormal belief often acts as a mediator, meaning it's not just having a vivid imagination that leads directly to reporting a UFO experience, it's that the vivid imagination makes someone more open to believing in the paranormal, and that belief then makes them more likely to interpret ambiguous experiences through a paranormal lens, like a UFO encounter.
Interesting. Are there other personality traits associated with these experiences?
Some studies using personality assessments like the Myers-Briggs type indicator have found tendencies. For instance, people reporting UFO experiences sometimes score higher on the feeling and intuiting dimensions and lower on the sensing dimension.
Feeling and intuiting, suggesting maybe a more subjective internal way of processing the world rather than relying purely on concrete sensory data.
Potentially, yes. And the feeling dimension, for example, has been found to correlate with beliefs in ESP telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition. It hints at a personality style that might be more open to non-conventional explanations or experiences.
This seems to tie into something called the worldview hypothesis. Can you explain that?
Sure. The worldview hypothesis suggests that holding paranormal beliefs isn't just an isolated thing. It's often part of a broader philosophical outlook. This worldview tends to be more subjective, maybe more esoteric. Truth, in this view, might be seen as something revealed through inner contemplation or intuition, rather than strictly through observable scientific facts.
And this worldview might influence how someone approaches evidence or skepticism.
Exactly. This kind of worldview often correlates with a lower emphasis on traditional scientific values and potentially weaker dispositional skepticism. The inherent tendency most people have to question things and seek concrete evidence before accepting extraordinary claims. It's not about intelligence, it's about the framework used to understand the world.
So putting it all together, it seems like a complex mix of personality traits, belief systems, and maybe how people interpret unusual or ambiguous experiences.
I think that's a fair summary. And it's crucial to remember none of this is about saying the experiences aren't real to the person having them. They absolutely are. It's about understanding the complex psychological factors that might contribute to how those experiences are perceived, interpreted, and reported.
Ultimately, whether these stories turn out to be genuine encounters with something unknown, elaborate hoaxes, or complex psychological experiences,
Yeah.
they undeniably tap into something deep within us.
Absolutely. They speak to these fundamental human desires, the desire for knowledge, the allure of mystery, the hope or maybe fear of connection beyond our own world, our everyday lives. It's about meaning and our place in this vast, vast cosmos.
We've really covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive. We've journeyed through the world of alien encounters, looking at everything from those easily debunked hoaxes, the Russian breadcrumb alien, the New Jersey blimp, which show how easily things can be faked or misinterpreted.
All the way to those truly compelling, unresolved mysteries that continue to fascinate and puzzle us. Cases like Stefan Mikolak with the physical radiation burns, or the incredibly influential Betty and Barney Hill abduction narrative, and of course the modern digital enigma of Skinny Bob.
It's fascinating to see how science constantly strives to explain the unexplained, pushing the boundaries of our understanding about the universe, technology, and even our own minds.
And yet, through it all, that core human fascination with the unknown, with the possibility of what if, just persists, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Our understanding of the cosmos is always evolving, constantly being updated. And as we've seen vividly today, in this age of instant information and potential misinformation, critical thinking is more important than ever. Really questioning sources, looking for evidence, considering alternative explanations.
Absolutely paramount.
So, as we wrap up, here's a final thought for you to ponder. Think about our inherent human curiosity, that deep-seated need to explore and understand. Combine that with the sheer vastness of the universe and all the mysteries it still holds.
Considering all that, isn't it almost inevitable that the question, are we alone, will continue to be one of humanity's most captivating, most enduring, and perhaps ultimately one of our unanswerable questions?